In 1914, a passenger pigeon named Martha died alone in her cage at the Cincinnati Zoo. She was the last of her kind. 100 years earlier, passenger pigeons had been the most abundant bird in North America, possibly the most abundant bird on Earth, with flocks so large they darkened the sky for hours as they passed. By 1914, there were none left except Martha, and when she died, an entire species ended, not with a catastrophe, but with the quiet death of one old bird in a zoo. Which raises an obvious question: what makes an animal's death matter? Hi, I'm Mara, and this is Microplanet. The answer is different for different deaths. Some matter because of what they end, some matter because of what they reveal, and some matter because of what they accidentally change about the humans who witnessed them. Martha's death ended a species that had been reduced from billions to zero within 50 years, almost entirely by commercial hunting. Her death also created a concept that didn't previously exist in the popular imagination: extinction as something that could happen to a common, thriving species within a human lifetime. Before Martha, most people assumed extinction was something that happened to ancient, rare things. After Martha, it became something different, a failure that was recent, visible, and preventable. Harambe the gorilla died in 2016 at the Cincinnati Zoo when a 3-year-old child fell into his enclosure, and handlers made the decision to shoot him rather than risk the child's safety. The decision was defensible. Male gorillas are enormous and unpredictable under stress, and tranquilizers take too long to act. But the internet response was enormous and lasted years. What Harambe's death revealed wasn't really about gorillas. It was about how humans process grief and outrage when those emotions have nowhere productive to go. Harambe became a meme, which was strange, and then became something more durable, a cultural shorthand for the absurdity of collective emotional response. His death mattered not because of what it ended, but because of what it reflected. Cecil the Lion died in 2015 when a trophy hunter paid for a legal hunt in Zimbabwe and killed a well-known, GPS-collared, nationally beloved lion named Cecil, who had been the subject of a long-running Oxford University research project. The death triggered a global media response, a collapse in trophy hunting permit applications across multiple African countries, and new legislation in several U.S. states restricting the import of lion trophies. Cecil's death mattered because it made an abstract issue, trophy hunting's impact on individual identifiable animals, suddenly and specifically visible to people who had never thought about it. Lonesome George died in 2012 in the Galapagos Islands. He was a Pinta Island tortoise, the last known individual of his subspecies, who had been discovered in 1972 after his subspecies was believed to be extinct. He lived for 40 years as a conservation symbol, survived multiple breeding attempts that failed to produce fertile offspring, and died of natural causes at somewhere between 100 and 120 years old. His death was expected, studied, and documented, and it mattered less as a tragedy than as a lesson. The window for saving a species closes faster than anyone wants to admit, and a single surviving individual is not the same thing as a viable population. Knut, the polar bear, died in 2011 at the Berlin Zoo at age 4. He had been born in captivity, rejected by his mother, hand-raised by zookeepers, and became the most famous polar bear in the world, a media phenomenon that generated millions of visitors to the Berlin Zoo and launched an enormous amount of public attention toward polar bear conservation. When he died unexpectedly from a brain inflammation, the response was devastation on a scale usually reserved for public figures. What Knut's death revealed was something scientists already knew but rarely communicated effectively: that individual animals, when they have names and faces and histories, generate emotional connections that anonymous statistics of species decline never can. All 5 of these animals died in entirely different ways for entirely different reasons, and all 5 mattered for entirely different reasons. Martha mattered because her death created a concept. Harambe mattered because his death revealed a cultural reflex. Cecil mattered because his death changed a policy. Lonesome George mattered because his death closed a window that had been open for a century. And Knut mattered because his death demonstrated the power of individual identity in conservation, the lesson that a name and a face can do more for a species than 100 scientific reports. Which brings us back to Martha's cage in Cincinnati. She weighed 1.5 kilograms. She was given a block of ice to keep her cool in her final days, and when she was gone, there were no more passenger pigeons anywhere, ever. The species that had once darkened the sky was gone, and it had taken exactly 1 lifetime.